Hey, hi, hello, and welcome to the first episode of the Unapologetically Me podcast. I am Jessica, and I am your host. And I'm really excited to be starting this journey. I am going to be honest, these first few episodes are probably going to be very awkward because I have no clue what I'm doing. I have no clue what direction this is gonna go. I know the direction that I would like it to go, and so we're just gonna hope we steer that way. This podcast is being created because of two reasons. One, because the world lost one of the most prolific and profound and just, I think, all around incredible conservative voices in the loss of Charlie Kirk, and I was inspired by him. I did not fully realize when I was watching him that he was 6 months younger than me and all of the things he's achieved. And while I will never again compare my life to someone else's in terms of I'm not winning a race, because I don't think it's a race, I definitely, with his loss, feel that there is a need and a call for conservative voices to be willing to get on platforms, talk about hard topics, communicate with people that don't view things the way they do, and to carry out and continue the legacy he has. And in a lot of ways, I do see this podcast heading that direction, at least a little bit. But I also want this place to be a space where you can be entirely yourself and have that unapologetic mentality of stopping apologizing for being loud, for having a voice, for having views, for having all of the different things. So I think for me, it's just going to turn into a little bit of everything. And he was the final straw for me. But I've been feeling the call on my heart for a while because, full transparency, everyone that watches this, I lived my 20s not being my best self. Not being my most authentic, not even using my voice at all. And I'm trying to figure out how I fully explain that, and I think in bits and pieces we'll get there. But I'm coming out of one of the hardest seasons of my life. I am coming out of literally rock bottom. And I feel like sharing what my life was like in my 20s and sharing the experiences that I've gone through and sharing how I came out of them and what steps I'm doing to move forward and how I'm healing is something that will potentially correlate and relate for other women, will potentially be something that is a connecting point for other people. But above all of that, I just want this podcast to be a space where I finally can say my narrative and my truth and give a platform to others to do the same, should they want to. But yeah, I spent my 20s seeking permission, validation, performing for others, explaining myself, softening my story, softening the things that were going on, apologizing for my existence, allowing myself to disappear into other people's expectations so that I didn't have to actually push for my own. Constantly doing things that made myself feel smaller so that other people were comfortable. And I realized that in protecting other people's peace, I was losing my own. And that part to me is not okay. I was making myself into a version of myself that was the perfect girlfriend, or the perfect daughter, or the perfect employee, or, the perfect future potential daughter-in-law, all of those things. I was just constantly focusing on seeking everybody else's validation, that I truly quit caring about my own. I quit looking in the mirror and liking the person that I was seeing, but everybody else liked that version of me, so it was fine. That's the world I let myself live in. And people would say to me all the time, well, I'm not comfortable with this, or comfortable with that, or do less, soften up, be more girly, allow yourself to have that soft feminine, and do all these things. And I was living in an era of my life where that wasn't something I was able to be, and that wasn't something that I wanted to be. But I let everybody else tell me that that's what I needed to be. And so I was the perfect friend. I was the perfect girlfriend. I was at least the versions of myself that I felt like I needed to be to get that kind of confirmation. I dropped anything and everything for people all the time, and I was always the friend that picked people up. I was always the friend that went after people. But in the last 5 years of my life, all of the friends that I had constantly been there for and done that for decided that they didn't like the direction my narrative was going, so they cut me out. Or they didn't understand, or they didn't want to understand, or they had gotten what they wanted out of me and let me go, and they were just like, nope, don't need that anymore. So I just, in the last 3 to 4 years, stopped performing and stopped pretending and stopped shrinking down to fit everybody else's expectations. And that's what I want this podcast to be, because it's never going to be polished, it's never going to be perfect, and it's never going to be pretty. It's always going to be a little unfiltered, raw, all of it, because it needs to be, and because it should be. I am done editing myself to fit everybody else's standards and wants and needs and their stories. Just because my story doesn't align with their story anymore doesn't mean that I need to be made into the villain. And that's something that I've also been recognizing. I was suffocating. I was suffocating under the expectations of the people that were in my life. And the beautiful part about making a podcast like this is that it can just be my truth, and it can be a narrative space. And if any of these people that have been in my life listen to this, or find it, or decide they want to hear me out, and they want to have a conversation, they're more than welcome. I fully intend to do a segment called Human After All, where I sit down with someone and we have a conversation, and the conversation can go questions and back and forth and things like that. So that is something that I do hope to grow out of this, and won't be all the time, and it won't be every episode, but I do want that to become something that becomes a regular part of it. And having conversations with like-minded people that have different opinions, people from my past that want to clear the air. If they hear something on this that they don't like, I'm game for all of it, because I feel like it's time. And it's time for me to share and give my story the voice it deserves, because I have had such a unique experience, especially in the last 5 years, that I just, the calling on my heart got louder. But I went from, I don't know who I am anymore, to, oh, there you are. And that feeling is one of the best feelings I think I've ever had. And developing this podcast and knowing what the first few episodes are going to look like, and creating that space for myself, has been such a great experience. It's been honestly the best part of the entire process, because I know that this is messy, that this episode is going to be extremely messy because it's the back and forth. But I wanted the first episode to be messy because I wanted to get people's attention. I want it to be where someone goes, oh, that kind of clicked with me. Oh, I kind of feel that. Oh, I'm one of those people she's calling out. Oh, this is something that is an aspect of it that I need to know more. And you know, it's a thing that happens when you've been quiet for too long. You just decide that the narrative's there and it's time to speak. So, that being said, I chose unapologetic because I apologized for everything, all the time. I'm sorry was 2 words or phrase that I used daily. I used it all the time. I was constantly apologizing for things that were not my fault. And I apologized for things that I didn't have any need to apologize for. And I chose unapologetic because I have reached a point with my story, my narrative, and the events of my life in the last few years that I'm not ashamed of. I do not feel like I need to apologize for, and therefore I will not be. It's not that I'm trying to be unkind. It is not that I'm trying to be too sharp, too bold, too mean, too ignorant. I'm not trying to be that at all. But being unapologetic means that you know in your soul that you are speaking your truth, the truth, however you want that to go, and that you're not afraid of what potential repercussions come out of it. And I think for me, I'm not diluting myself anymore for other people's approval. If you don't like me, that's fine. If you don't want to listen to me, that's fine. If you don't want to talk to me or be my friend, that's fine. I feel like I have spent so much time trying to be the right kind of woman, the right kind of daughter, the right kind of human being, and I went through the hardest era of my life without all of the people that I had been the best version of myself for. So this podcast is really about letting that go, giving it its space to breathe, giving it its space to have time, and then moving on. Because I am learning to live my life for who I am and not who I was and not who anybody expects me to be besides myself. This is not going to be self-help. This is not going to be, you need to think like me. This is not any of those kind of things. This is just talking about reminding yourself of the person that you are in those eras and moments of your life where you lose it. It's about feeling a little less lonely in the honest and processing all of the different stages and all of the different pieces that make us who we are. And we are going to talk politics. We are going to talk religion. We are going to talk health and wellness. We are going to talk general life experiences. I want to invite conversations with family members. I want to invite conversations with friends, strangers. I want this to be a platform where there's a freedom. There's a freedom in accepting the fact that you are exactly the person you are supposed to be. And that even if you go through an era like I did where you lose that sense of self and you lose that part of you that feels like your voice, that it's okay and that you can still rebuild and come out of it. and that you don't have to apologize for being in the middle of the process, because you're never going to not be. And that the right people will come into your life and love you unconditionally, and they will respect you, and they will defend you, and the wrong people will leave your life because that is their time and your story's over. I, in my 20s, like so many people that are in their 20s now, did not want to believe in any type of religion or get myself grounded in a faith. And I am now reading the Bible. I am baby stepping my way into religion, which will be its own episode 100%. But I'm learning that God doesn't give you anything you can't handle. And God doesn't give you easy or convenient for your lives when you're meant to be a warrior speaking out. And He has a plan and a path for everybody. I have been really soul searching with that based off of my life in the last 5 years. I've been really digging deep. And we'll get into that. I have a whole episode planned on religion and talking about how I got to the point I'm at now and what I'm doing, but it feels like it's something that's important to say with this episode, is that I feel like this is a calling on my heart from God to do something more with the pain and the struggles and the dark places that I've been in my life in the last few years, and the loss of myself in the last few years, that feels like it needs to be said and needs to be spoken. So I'm excited. I mean, I really am. I'm really excited because I think that this journey is going to be such a beautiful one. And if one person listens, if 10 people listen, or if 10 years, 20 years down the line, somebody finally listens, then I think it'll be great. But I don't want to not be doing something with my voice to give the next generation something that they can relate to. The next generation of women, the next, even guys. I feel like even younger guys and stuff still go through this too, of they're trying to fit the narratives to fit into everybody else's scripts, and they're not realizing that they have their own beautiful narrative too, because we all do. I mean, we're all on a path, and we're all gonna find that voice for a reason. And I think maybe my last little bit for today's episode, since it's a little bit shorter as an introduction, is to say that in the last 5 years of my life, my longest relationship had ended. I was in a car accident. I found out I had cancer. I was in a relationship with somebody long distance. That relationship ended while I was still in the midst of all the chaos with the cancer. I met the love of my life. I made tough decisions. And with his support, and now I am coming full circle out of some of the hardest chapters and decisions I've had to make. And I just know in my heart that sharing that journey, even sharing further back in my 20s if I have to, is something that deserves to have a voice and deserves to have a narrative. So thank you, anybody who stayed longer than the first 5 minutes. Thank you to listening to the initial ramblings of a 32-year-old woman that has had an interesting life experience. And I am so excited for this podcast to take off. I'm so excited for this podcast to bloom and grow and become. And yeah, we're on a journey together, folks, and this is just the beginning. So thank you for listening. This is Unapologetically Me. I'm Jessica Spillman, and stay tuned.